Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Now this, believe it or not, is a hardy geranium. It's called Blue Cloud. It is just simply enormous. And when it's covered with blue flowers, it is a cloud spreading out and it's glorious. But when the flowers start to go over, it's taking up a lot of space in the border and not contributing any colour at all. And the secret is be ruthless. Once there is more seed head to be seen than flower, cut it back. So I'm getting in there and cutting right back. Of course, by cutting back as dramatically as this, I'm leaving an empty space in the border, and that doesn't look good. But you have to do this now in order for it to look good later in the year. And I got space, which means I can plant into it. I can put in cosmos, zinnias. They will flower, they'll be perfectly happy, and they will go on flowering and look really good until the first frost, which could well be in November. Earlier in the spring, I did cut this plant back, round about mid-May, giving it a Chelsea chop, and that meant reducing it by a third. You can see it's got more flowers as a result. It's not so tall, so that was a good idea. Next year, I'm going to be even more radical. So round about the beginning or the middle of April, once it's reached about 2 foot tall, I'm going to cut it back. That will delay it, so it won't clash with the roses, because the biggest problem with this is that it overwhelms the roses around it. And who would have thought that a hardy geranium would swamp a shrub rose? But there you go, it happens. I have to say that this part of the garden, this is the Long Walk, which is a sort of fancy name for this bit between the cottage garden and the dual garden, is probably my favourite part of Longmeadow now. It couldn't be simpler. Green grass, green hedges, green trees, one vase at the end. That's it. But it's beautifully calm. And the whole idea of it is to have a pause between the busyness of the cottage garden and the intensity of colour of the dual garden. Just cool green shade. And for that, it's perfection. Come on, Ed. Come around the corner, and this bit is very different. But the key thing about this area is that it floods regularly. And what we've done is put in bulbs that like damp conditions, and there aren't many. We have fritillaries, we have leucojum, the snowflake, and camassias, and they follow in sequence. Now, the camassias finished, about a month, 6 weeks ago. You let the foliage die back, and then you can cut it. So what we do now is cut the grass, rake it all up, and then keep it as a mown path for the rest of the summer, having cut the hedges back so there's a little bit more light and a little bit more room. So it totally changes its character. Let's get cracking. Right, we're not going to play this game because I'm going to cut the grass. Should I do that? Come on. Before you start cutting any long grass, or even any hedges for that matter, do check to see that there is no wildlife. And if you see a nest or an animal, then stop and leave it. But it is worth checking. This is not a wildflower meadow. This is long grass with bulbs in it. If you've got a wildflower meadow, the important thing is to let your wildflowers set seed. So as long as there are flowers still flowering that you want, don't cut it. We're going to join Adam now as he visits a wall garden. Now this was allowed to fall into almost complete disrepair, but has now been gloriously restored.
This is Loseley Park in Surrey. It sits in over 1,000 acres of rolling countryside. The walled garden has been broken into a series of garden rooms that have been transformed over the last 3 decades. So as you can imagine, I can't wait to explore. A family home for more than 400 years. Everything changed in 1994 when the gates of the estate were flung open to the public, and the transformation from estate to gardens was handed to head gardener Richard Burney. Burney, to his friends, seized the opportunity to transform it into something truly spectacular. Burney, I've got to say, first of all, just wow. This is like...
Well, thank you for saying so.
You know, it's obviously broken into rooms, but your eye, the detail, the colour, absolutely incredible. But how do you approach planting design?
Well, I don't plan anything.
You don't plan anything?
I don't plan anything. The way I deal with it, we do a lot of annuals, so we do a lot of bedding. And I wouldn't know what goes in until the morning that we dig it over.
So things like your miscanthus, you will place euphorbias, so they become your structure.
They become your structure.
And then you work this magic
through.
And
then you work round them, that's right.
Yeah.
And you choose your colour schemes by what's going to be in flower next to it, so you don't want to clash. You've got Rudbeckias there. That might change next year. It might have sunflowers in there.
So you've got this constant flux, really, I
flow.
suppose.
Yeah.
What was it like, this place, when you arrived?
When the Major came back after the war, he set up an organic vegetable garden.
Right.
And it was like that until the mid-80s. Then it was just left.
Wow.
So there was nothing here. It was just grass and weeds. And we started again. I dug over every single square foot and planted everything in. It's been a challenge, but it's been a life's work.
Burney has spent decades with his hands in this soil, getting to know every worm and quirk. He runs the garden to a tight, well-rehearsed rhythm. His succession planting keeps the whole place looking constant, yet appears effortless. Annuals are his secret weapon, and the reason the garden never misses a beat. Forget-me-nots play a big part for you, do they, in the spring?
Yeah. Yeah, we do a lot of spring bedding with these.
Do these just come out? How do you
we normally just pull these out like that, and we save the seeds. These go in trays in the tunnel.
So you've got a tray with the plastic, and then they'll go and dry and then get bashed?
We bash them up, and then that falls on the plastic, and it's easy to separate.
They'll then get resown? How do you approach that?
We need a lot of plants. So start of August, the spuds will all be dug up to create beds for sowing these. So we'll be planting annuals in here.
Yeah.
In the autumn time, they get cut down to ground level, and we'll be bringing in the forget-me-nots that we've sown in there.
So, to be fair, a bit like the old school, you know, we used to do with the wallflowers, that type of thing.
That's it.
You know?
Well, we do wallflowers as well. It just gives you the supply that you need.
Compost on top?
Spuddle it in. That's a northern term.
Spuddle it in.
So it's a good mix, you know. It's a good mix
I like that. Spuddle. Shall I pass these over?
Yeah. So these are Kuffias. They're just a really good filler.
Yeah, because I've grown them a couple of times in containers, but that's about it. I mean, they're lovely small flower.
And it just gets better as the season goes on.
I love some of the short-lived perennials that you've used, that you're letting them sort of seed around, and Vavascum's a prime example. Yeah. They're peppered all the way through, aren't they?
Yes, they are. I'll let them go. We do a lot of self-seeding and a lot of fine-tuning as well.
I'm now walking into the herb garden. But look at the hollyhocks. I mean, that literally just sucks you in. Talking to Bernie about plants that are happy and then just letting them go. That's exactly what he's done here. I mean, he started using the hollyhocks just to help with pollination, you know, in the garden. And they're definitely doing that. These are fig-leaved hollyhocks, so less susceptible to rust. But actually, you know, they love a little bit of lime. You know, that's why you see them growing out in cracks in the wall. This is fantastic. It's over 200 herbs in here. And I love the way that Bernie split it up into sections. So we've got medicinal, we've got more decorative, then we've got the culinary, and then this section here is household, which I think's brilliant because it sort of demonstrates in a way how herbs have weaved their way through our lives. So look at that, that's just a teasel. But that was used in the woolen industry, so these would have been cut off and then they would have been used on cloth just to create a finer finish. And if you get your hand on that, you can see exactly how that would work.
The joy of a garden with many rooms like this is that every twist and turn reveals a gem.
Seriously, this takes your breath away. White garden Bernie created 20 plus years ago as a contrast to all that wonderful colour that works through the rest of the garden. It feels sort of luxurious. The first thing that catches my eyes are the yews. They look like rockets that fire up through the planting, but they connect to the wider landscape. And then you come down, you've got viburnums and then white roses, and they create these really sort of strong forms. You've got to say, this hydrangea Annabelle is the star of the show. So much so, it feels like some sort of quilt, you know, that you just want to jump into. Just pure joy. But if I had to describe how this feels, you've had a tough day and you get home, you go inside and somebody gives you a cuddle. It's that feeling. This is an incredible garden. It really is.
What Bernie has achieved here is wonderful. He's been quietly beavering away with his sustainable planting methods, crafting beauty.
You know what, you've been here for a long time and, you know, you've created a magical garden. And I don't think you really realise what you've created here.
I'm the garden's biggest critic, and I should be. You know, it's my job to make it better. If other people can come and enjoy it, then that's my job done.
I can completely relate to Bernie's approach to planting. Here at Longmeadow, we've never had a planting plan of any kind at all, other than certain colours that we focus on, and then growing a lot of annuals and working them in. And of course, that changes from year to year. Sometimes it works well, sometimes not so well, but it's fun. And Bernie has made it work incredibly well at Loseley. Now, at Gardeners World Live, I bought some Aruncus. I was looking specifically for plants for this woodland area, and this caught my eye. It's Aruncus Horatio. I love this delicate but plentiful foliage, and then the familiar Aruncus flowers rising out. Aruncus are a plant that is ideal for light shade. They do need a bit of moisture, but they're very adaptable. You see, we've got a nice gap there. I wonder what happens if we go in there. So you stand back, have a look, see how that feels. far better to change your mind whilst it's in the pot than after you've planted it. However, I think we're there. I think we'll get them in the ground. Now, at this time of year, give plants a soak the day before, or at the very least an hour or two before you plant them. And be prepared to give them a really good drink immediately after planting. You can see this is a really good plant. It's a good size, it's healthy, it's got a nice root system where you can see the roots on the outside, but you can also see the compost, so it's not root bound. There we go. I do get real pleasure from looking at the garden, and I think the woodland garden is coming along nicely. My plan is to extend it right up to the writing garden, and I think that will be a really exciting project. Right, we're going to Hook in Hampshire, which is my old stamping ground. I grew up not far from there, to visit somebody who is not looking at the garden as a tapestry of plants creating a general picture, but at something very much more specific.
Hi, I'm Amanda Whitaker. I've got the National Collection of Crassula species. I'm really chuffed to have this. It's the only national collection of Crassula in the country.
How do you pronounce it?
Crassula.
You sure? Looks like a crassula to me.
Oh, Crassula. Well, that might be just northern dialect. Right, I don't know now. But it's not Crassula. I know that's for sure. There's something about succulents that really interests me. Just the way they adapt to different environments around the world. It just is fascinating. Always wanted to be a plant hunter like Joseph Banks, but I couldn't be. I had a young family. I came across a Crassula and I just thought, wow, you are something different. Started with 7 and it went from there. I've got about 500 plants in the greenhouse. There's about 82 different species. I love Crassula. I just love the colour of the leaves. Green is my favourite colour. There's so many different shades of green. It just kind of lights up your life when you look at them. They're very similar to sedum, but you do get an eye for it. They have really small flowers, not showy at all. And their leaves always form opposite each other in pairs. They were really trendy in the 1700s, and then they were trendy when I was a little kid in the 70s, and then they've just fallen out of fashion. But now they're really coming back, and actually you can get hold of quite a variety in the garden centre. So we've got a real mixture of Crassula here. You would never think that these are all the same genus. I think this is why I really got interested in Crassula, because they are all so different. This is Macawaniana. This has got amazingly red margins here and it colours up really nicely. And on this one you can see how big the internodes are. So the internodes are this, what you'd probably call the stem, so it's the bit in between where the leaves come out. And where the leaves come out, those are called nodes. So this is a great example where it has a long internode and it's colouring up beautifully in the sunshine. And then you've got Pyramidalis. It's also a Crassula, you wouldn't believe it, but you can't see the internodes at all. They are there, but they're going to be absolutely minute. But you wouldn't think that this is a Crassula, you would think perhaps this is a cacti. Then you've got an Atropurpurea, and this has really amazing hairs on it, so it's so different from this kind of thing. And when you look under this, under the microscope, it will just blow your mind. And then one of the most amazing is Muscosa. So again, there are no internodes on this at all. It's just really tiny, minute leaves and even smaller flowers. They almost look like a mouse's tail or snakes. They're just so varied. What cannot make you smile when you get up in the morning when you see these guys? The biggest nightmare for a crassula is having some mealybugs infest your greenhouse. The females you see because there's just a cluster of white fluff in the internodes. But what you don't see is the males, which are microscopic, and they fly. So you've no idea what's going on at night when everybody's asleep. There's a variety of cures. One is just to pick them off. That's quite easy to do, but that won't work long term. So the best thing to do is to repot anything that comes into your collection to make sure you're not passing anything on. I got the National Collections status in 2013. It's really important for science. It's really important for maintaining plants that could be threatened. I love collecting. Some people have national collections that are acres. This just shows that you can have a national collection in your back garden, in your teeny-weeny greenhouse.
Where's the greenhouse?
Greenhouse is just behind me.
Can't see it. Oh, yeah.
They're very easy to propagate. You don't have to go around taking cuttings. The plant will naturally drop its leaves to create new plants. And I've got two here to show you. This is what it'll look like when it first comes off the plant, and it'll have no roots at all. You leave it on the top of the grit and let it dry out. That will then create a callus, and from there, the roots will start to go. And then you're ready to go. So get yourself a pot. Doesn't have to be terracotta, it can be a plastic pot, a few crops in the bottom. Then your substrate needs to be ericaceous compost. That's really, really important. So I use 1 part ericaceous compost and 2 parts horticultural grit. Pop your plant in, just slightly bury those roots, and then give it a lovely top dress with your horticultural grit. Try to go from the outside, and then you've less chance of covering the leaves with your grit. Press it down, give it a little bit of a water, and then it's all ready to go. I got myself a digital microscope about 10 years ago now, and when you first use it, it's just amazing. You can't believe what you can see. Anyone can pick one up, it's nothing specialist. You'd look at this plant and think it's just got hairy leaves. What I'm seeing here actually on the screen is a really detailed look at the surface. It's these tiny little papillae, these little cells that you couldn't imagine were there at all, and they're all full of water. It just takes you into another world. I mean, I can spend hours and hours and hours looking at this and be really happy. It's absolutely fascinating.
The more I garden, the more convinced I am that fundamentally we're all divided into 2 groups of gardeners. You're either someone who focuses in on plants, like Amanda, and gets huge pleasure from knowing as much as possible about them. And these people tend to be great plants people and just a fount of plant knowledge. And then there's the other group, which goes out and wants to see as many different gardens as possible and loves plants because they make gardens. However, whether you're a plant lover or a garden lover, you still have to do the basics of gardening. And at this time of year, I always feed my large pots weekly. This is a seaweed mix, high in potash, and you're asking a lot of pots like this. I mean, this one we put phlomis, we've got the festuca, we've got pale yellow petunias, which are actually slightly being swamped now by the blue lobelias. But to make sure that they keep performing for as long as possible, and that could be well into November, they do need a little bit of extra oomph, so a weekly feed is a good idea. The one thing I would stress, though, is there is no gain whatsoever in overfeeding. You don't get more if you give more. Just once a week is plenty, and that's enough to keep them going. Let's sit down. Come on, matey. This is what we should do all day. Just sit and cuddle. It is nice to sit occasionally. And actually, the moment is perfect here because the lavender is in full swing and just humming with bees, and the butterflies love it. And of course, the fragrance is wonderful. And behind them, we've got the espalier pears. And if you're growing fruit in a trained format, now is the time to take a really important course of action in order to maintain their shape. So, Ned, nice as it is sitting, we've got work to do. Come on then, let's go to work. This way. Now we're past midsummer. If you grow any top fruit, that's fruit that grows on wood, basically, so obviously apples and pears and cherries, as opposed to soft fruit, then you do need to think about summer pruning. In the vegetable garden, I grow step-over apples, and actually I've planted a couple of step-over pears too. Now, step-over simply means that they are very low, low enough to step over. And you have a single trunk, and then what you do is you take the leader one way and you take the second branch the other way, and that's it. And you tie them down horizontally, and then side shoots come off those two branches, and those are the ones that produce the apples. It's an incredibly good way of growing a surprising amount of fruit in a very, very limited space. But it does depend upon quite fierce pruning every summer. All this growth here has happened this year. And what it is doing is taking vigor from the fruit production into the tree itself. So when you prune in summer and take off that year's new growth, you are restricting the development of the tree, but enhancing the development of fruit. When you prune in winter, you are actually encouraging development of the tree because it will respond by putting out new shoots with even more vigor. And you can use that difference with how you manage your fruit trees, particularly if they're trained. Don't just cut them back a bit like that. The vast majority of apples are produced on spurs. That's little side growths rather than the tips. And that takes about 2 to 3 years to form. What you need to do is go right back to a swelling in the wood. That's last year's growth, so that has the possibility of bearing fruit next year or the year after. So if I just cut above it, I may well get apples off that spur. So you need to prune, and July is the best time to do it. We'll take that back there like that. I know I'm being very specific about where to cut, but don't be intimidated. You know, if in doubt, cut. It's very forgiving. So if you cut too little, trim it back again later. If you cut too much, well, it will regrow. But it is quite important, if you want to keep the shape of your stepovers or espaliers or fans or gordons, to prune now in summer and not leave it till winter. Pruning in summer also exposes the fruit to the sunshine, so they ripen better. And it's worth pointing out that actually I should have thinned these fruit at least a month ago. It's not too late though, because if you see here, you've got 4 apples coming off one side shoot. As a good rule of thumb, 2 is plenty. Better to have 2 really good size, healthy, ripe apples rather than 4 struggling to compete. Now, while I finish the other, we're going to join Sue in her garden down in South Wales, where she has a number of projects on the go.
I'm doing a little hard landscaping job. This border's been in now for 12 years and it's mulched with cockle shells, which are a local waste product. But over the years, with a bit of weeding and a little bit of bird activity, it's got a bit thin on the ground. So I'm going to top it all up. So these are going to help suppress weeds and retain moisture. That's one of probably about 50 buckets that I'll be putting in this border over the summer. But I've got other jobs I want to get on with now. I've had great success this year with the germination of my tomatoes because I got a heat map for Christmas and it's made a huge difference. I'm growing lots of different tomatoes, but this one is Tumbling Tom. And these ones are determinants. It means that they're all going to fruit over about a period of a month. And then they're all going to be gone and I'm not going to have tomatoes going through the rest of the summer. So a couple of months ago in April, I decided to sow some more because we've had such lovely autumns. I think I'm going to get a second crop. And because I'm a bit short of space in the greenhouse, I'm going to grow them in a hanging basket. So I'm lining my hanging basket with natural wool, which is a wonderful product. But I'm not using stuff that I've just got off the local farmer. I'm using a washed wool because it makes sure it hasn't got any chemicals. It feels absolutely lush and it smells lovely. So I'm going to fill it with some compost. I've got a bit of wood ash from my fire full of potassium. So I'm going to add it to the soil mix, just a bit, and it's going to help the plant grow strongly and fruit well. This size basket will cope with just one tomato plant because they grow quite large and they need a lot of feeding. This needs water, it needs time for the wool and the soil to soak up. So I'm going to pop it into a container to absorb the water from the bottom. And I can move it myself now because it's really light. But once it's full of water, I'm going to have to get my husband to hang it. I just want to share this happy place with you. I'm really pleased with this border. It's part of 4 red borders, and this lovely Maltese cross and these lovely Stipa tenuissima are working so well together. I love it here. It's really sunny, it's very free draining, the soil's not that good. While I'm happy with this bed, I'm not happy with the bed above it. This is quite a wide bed for me and it's quite an awkward place to garden. So I was reading how to use climbers in different ways in an old book and I thought I might try a clematis. And I went to Chelsea and I saw one that I loved, Clematis nubia. It's only going to grow for about 1 metre and I'm going to use it to sort of grow along the ground rather than up. Now, it's not the greatest time to put a clematis in, but I've got it, so I'm going to put it with its roots in the shade and look after it, and hopefully it'll spread and it'll flower throughout the season. It's important to get the clematis sort of almost buried below the level it's in the pot to make sure it stays cool and gets moist, and the new shoots from the bottom of the clematis will grow. I've had it in a bucket of water for about an hour or two to make sure it's really hydrated and the soil around it is really moist. I can see it's already saying hello and trying to grab onto other plants. So I'm going to make sure its roots are firmly in contact with the soil. I put in some compost around it because I really want the roots to stay cool and I'll get that sort of growth from the bottom. And just to be absolutely certain, because it is really one of the sunniest spots in the garden, I'm going to use a stone and I'm going to place it around the base just to keep it in shade, really. Then I'm going to get down, say hello. Hello, clematis, welcome to my garden. So will it or won't it solve this border problem? It's coming to the end of the time that it's wise to harvest rhubarb. About midsummer, they say, because it needs to put on some growth after the last pick so it can send energy down into the crown so you get great rhubarb next year. Now, the best way to do this is not to cut it, but to pull it. So you want to push it down and then wiggle it from side to side. Oh, there it goes. And you've actually almost, I can show you, you've got a sort of little heel. So a cut would actually maybe let in disease and water damage and would damage the plant, but it naturally breaks off here. So I've done that very well, if I say so myself. There it goes. I like to add flavour layers when I'm cooking fruit, and I've often used these scented geranium leaves, but I found a new leaf to use, and it's like a match made in heaven. I've got a couple of figs around the garden, and while I love the fruit, I've discovered the leaves are really flavoursome too. So when you cook them, they smell of figs, but they taste of coconut. So what I like to do is put the fig leaf under the rhubarb and I'll bake it. Then I'll take the leaf away and I'm left with coconut-infused rhubarb, which is absolutely delicious. I've got one last activity in the garden today that is bringing a smile on my face, as we've got a family wedding and I'm making confetti. And I'm using all the roses around the garden to do this, and I'm looking for ones that look as though they're just about to drop their petals. And here is one, and then I pop my basket underneath and I give it a bit of a shake and ooh, out they come. And the way I'm going to make the confetti is I'm going to use my new heat mat. I'm laying the tissue on the heat mat, then a single layer of petals, and then another layer of tissue to hide the light. Turn it on, and in about 4 to 5 hours, I have beautiful confetti. And it works much better than just drying it out in a dark room, because the quick process seems to keep the colour and the scent much more effectively. There's no yellowing. And I think I need a few more. So I'm going to sit back and see some more under here. And it's lovely to think all these beautiful petals aren't going to go to waste. They're going to go into my home, be thrown at the wedding, and become part of the rest of the summer.
Well, I think the idea of confetti made from rose petals from your garden is a beautifully romantic one. So, I hope the wedding goes well and a life of happiness ensues. I think Ned thinks he's married to me, actually. If I pay attention to anyone else when he's around, he gets very jealous. And if I sit down, he automatically comes and lies on my lap, which is fine up to a point, but we've got a big thing to do, Ned. We've got to harvest potatoes. Potato harvest time. How about that? Come on, then. Let's see what there is. Down you get. Good boy. At this time of year, I always harvest my early potatoes. Now, you know they're ready to harvest when they start to flower. As soon as they start to flower, the tubers are forming, and the longer you leave them in the ground, the bigger they'll get. And you can leave them in the ground for another month or 2 or 3 even. But with new potatoes, it's not a bad idea to dig them either bit by bit and eat them as you dig them, or with this bed, you can store them, but they won't store as well as main crop. But that doesn't matter because there aren't many and we'll eat them all up. Now, I've grown to love a second early variety called Charlotte. And I've grown them in a bed and in a pot. So I want to compare the two. Oh, there's one straight away. So I put my hand in. There you go. The thing about Charlotte is that it has this very distinctive shape. It's oblong. That's the perfect size. It's earthy. And they're just particularly delicious. And actually, mashed waxy potatoes, made with a bit of olive oil rather than butter, is really delicious, but that's another whole thing. So, let's pop these in here. This, by the way, is a potato basket. It's got a mesh bottom so that the soil drops out when you put the spuds in, and you take these into the field, fill it up, and then tip these either into another bigger basket or into a trailer. And I've actually done that, oh gosh, I'm so old. Nearly 50 years ago, I helped a farmer with potato harvest, and we did it all with baskets in the field. Right, back to reality. We've got a few. That is just one plant, so that's not bad. I'm going to do a couple from here, and then I know I've got 2 in the container, and we'll compare the harvests of both. So let's do another one further along. This one, here we go, let's pull this. You can see that there's a bit of green on that. That means it's been exposed to light. And green potatoes are poisonous. All you have to do is cut out the green part. It's only the actual green that you shouldn't eat. So that's the first trial. Now let's see what's in here, which was exactly the same seed potatoes on the same day. And actually, what I really want to do is to encourage you to grow spuds in a container if you don't have room outside, to show that it is possible. So I'm hoping there will be quite a few here. Okay, here we go. Oh, look. I think there is no more treasure to be found. So, we have that grown in a container and that grown in the ground. And what I would say is it looks to me as if there are more in the container, but they're smaller. So probably it's the same weight of potato, but that's not bad. So, I will eat both with relish, whether they've been grown in the ground or a container. And I'll just be thinking about the taste, I suspect. However, I'm sure that when Professor Ben Raymond sits down to eat potatoes from his garden near Falmouth, he's thinking long and hard about the science behind them.
I'm generally interested in bugs. Caterpillars, aphids, mollusks are a major issue. Pests are continually evolving, they evolve resistance to things. There are new environmental challenges, so there's always problems to solve. I've been a scientist for over 30 years now, working on pests and diseases. Moved down here to the West Country 10 years ago, where I'm now a professor of ecology at the University of Exeter. I've grown a lot of plants. I've grown thousands of broad beans and nasturtiums to feed aphids, absolutely thousands of cabbages to feed caterpillars. When my kids were born, I got into having an allotment and getting the kids to really interact with the bugs and play with the worms and pick things off the bush just to get them to eat the vegetables. So we're far down in the far, far west of Cornwall on the south coast with Falmouth Bay just behind me. Winter temperatures barely get below 5, summer barely get above 25. We're technically subtropical down here, and also a lot of humidity, which again brings with a lot of challenges in terms of, fungal diseases. I'm a big fan of a really good spud, and Cornwall's got this amazing maritime climate. The biggest, most obvious problem for potatoes is late blight. Blight was the causative agent that produced the Irish potato famine, and it's an absolutely devastating crop. got a tiny little bit just starting to come in. Dark brown lesions, that's a classic sign. If it appears, just cut the stems right down to the ground and that will help preserve the tubers. I must have trialled 15 or 20 different varieties over the last 20 years. This is a fairly new blight-resistant variety, Java, easily as tasty as a King Edward. They roast up beautifully. They're quite drought-tolerant. That's the Christmas dinner one. My main passion is growing vegetables with good flavour for the table and feeding the family delicious tasting food. Sometimes it seems like madness growing your own vegetables when some of them, they're so cheap in the shop. So why go to the trouble? One of the things for me is getting the fresh product straight from the ground. So a fresh carrot's turned into carrot soup. It's got the most amazing aromatic presence that you just never get from a shop-bought carrot. I think that's what makes me happiest, is going out in the garden, pulling something out of the ground and making some food. For me, homegrown tomatoes usually got unbelievable flavour. You've got the acidity, you've got the sugar content, and that's really hard to replicate in a shop-bought, vine-ripened fruit. Mouthful. Really hits the mouth, especially when they're warm off the bush. Oh, really nice. Tomatoes also get quite a lot of diseases and problems, all kinds of stuff, but this is a common problem for tomatoes in grow bags. Blossom end rot. It just occurs when the compost dries out. Pick off the damaged fruit and let the plant fruit again. The developing fruit has been under stress, so I think what I should do here is probably pot up my plants into slightly bigger pots and just have a more steady watering program so that the compost doesn't dry. You can get blossom end rot with anything, but one of the varieties I'm growing this year is Fandango, which is a really nicely flavoured medium-size variety, and that's supposed to be fusarium and verticillium resistant and has some blight tolerance. You definitely have to be a nerd to be in science. There's a lot of time spent reading up on tiny, tiny sections of the literature, and there's always new problems for scientists to solve. Someone has to teach the young people about flatworms. I started my research career proper on broad bean aphids, looking at their relationship with their natural enemies, such as ladybirds and parasitoid wasps, little tiny wasps that lay their eggs inside the developing aphid, and grew a lot of broad beans for many, many years, and actually so many I couldn't really face growing one for at least 20 years afterwards. Aphids can be quite a big problem, one of the biggest insect pests in the UK. The best way to avoid problems is have an autumn sowing and try and get a really early crop in the spring. There are other plants in the garden which also help to establish colonies, such as fat hen. This is a little green plant with kind of silvery grey heart-shaped leaves. So weeding out that in particular, and also dock, can stop aphids moving from those weeds into your bean crop. Why get into science? Scientists, I mean, I suppose you have to have curiosity about the natural world to try to understand it. As a scientist, I always try to be a little bit useful. I don't know if I've always succeeded, but, you know, it's nice to have a problem to solve. Often it's a bit like a detective story, so you're kind of always putting together pieces of a puzzle. These three gnarly, established sweet apple trees are actually riddled with codling moth, and that's really the classic worm in the apple. You can see this pile of sort of brown dust. That's actually the caterpillar poo being pushed out of the hole. To be very careful if you want to bite into it, if you don't want to eat, caterpillar poo. Usually cut the caterpillar in half, that's traditional. So you can see what we call frass in entomology, piling up, and there's the tunnel for the larvae going down into the core of the apple. So one of the things you can do with codling moth is actually pick your apples off the ground and use them, and what we do in this garden is turn them into cider. You can actually cut out the eaten bits and process most of the apple and still use it. And that's a good way to turn a big apple crop and clean up your garden and get a nice drink out of it at the end of the day. For me, a lesson from sort of, decades of fruit and veg growing is trying to figure out which pests you can tolerate and which you can avoid. And the best thing you can do as a small grower with a small patch is just grow lots of different things, and inevitably one or two things are going to be taken and you'll lose out, but you'll have, a rich choice of different crops coming, and others will do well.
I think that Professor Raymond's making the most important point, which is diversity is the key. Monoculture will always be a problem, whether it's on a huge scale or on a garden scale. But if you grow lots of different things, the majority of them will be absolutely fine. I planted the yew hedges here in the dual garden about 6 years ago to replace box hedges that I planted, 30 years ago. And all the yew hedges I grew from cuttings. And at this time of year, in midsummer, it's a good time to take evergreen cuttings. And what you want to look for are nice, strong, upright growths. Remember, a cutting is a clone, so whatever you take it from, it will look exactly like that. But with softwood cuttings, you just need to bear something in mind, which is that they strike roots very quickly, but they also die very quickly, so you need to be prepared. So you absolutely have to have a polythene bag on you. And when you take your cuttings, put them in and keep them in, and that just slightly reduces the evaporation and buys you a little bit of extra time. Let's take that. Oh, that's a nice one. There we go. And that. Seal it, and these zip bags are brilliant for this. Right, that is now ready for processing, so off we go. The important thing when you're taking any cuttings is drainage. Now, I've still got some perlite, so I can use that, and it's very good, and you can do it in pure perlite. But I am in the process of replacing perlite with cork, because I discovered that at Gardeners World Live. So if you can get access to cork, that does well. Grit is really good, but whatever you use at least 50% of the drainage material to compost. So I'm just going to add some grit to there, like that. Mix it in with my hand, so I've got a really gritty area of compost. And then get your pot ready. You haven't opened the bag at all yet. You want a sharp knife. Open the bag and take out the material. That's too long, so I've got a pot like that. I'm going to cut that back like that and strip off a lot of the leaves. Don't just try and force it down into the compost, because that will damage the point from which the roots will come. So always make a hole and dib it into there. I might cut that back a bit, just below the node. Now I'm going to top that up with grit, like that. Label them with the date. And then put them somewhere where the air will be kept moist. I've got a misting unit, so that works very well. But most of us don't, so you've got two options. Either you can regularly spray them with a hand mister, but you will have to do it at least twice a day, particularly if it's very hot. Or a good tip is to use a polythene bag like this, water it, and then put the bag over the top, seal it tight round it, and put it somewhere bright but not in direct sunlight. So not a south-facing window, particularly at this time of year. And these should root quite quickly, and by quickly I mean in about 6 to 10 weeks. If you've got a yew hedge that you haven't yet cut, that is a really good thing to do right now. And if you haven't got a yew hedge, here are your jobs for the weekend. It's time now to be planning ahead for harvests in late summer and autumn. And I'm talking about crops like endive, beetroot, or little gem. Sprinkle the seed thinly on a seed tray of peat-free compost, cover them over, and then water them. Set them somewhere warm to germinate, and they should be ready to prick out and then plant into your vegetable beds in about 5 to 6 weeks' time. With these instances of very hot weather that we're increasingly having, it's a good idea to cool down your greenhouse. And the best way to do that is to wet the floor once or twice a day. It'll both cool it and increase humidity, which is a good way of combating red spider mite. If you grow cordon tomatoes, indoors or out, it's important to keep on pinching out the side shoots. This is a growth that happens at 45 degrees between the main stem and leaves. If you do this, you focus the plant's energy onto developing fruit rather than extra growth. It hasn't been a brilliant year for sweet peas, but better than last year. Mind you, anything was better than last year. It was so hot and dry, and sweet peas hate that. They like cool, damp summers. Well, we've had some very hot weather, like everybody else, but we've also had some cooler weather, so not too bad. Enough to pick. I haven't got many, but what I do have, they both smell wonderful, they look wonderful, and I think summer isn't really complete without sweet peas, both growing in the garden and enough to cut and pick and put in a vase, however small, indoors. That's it for today. Next week, the team will be at RHS Sandringham, and I will see you back here at Longmeadow next time. So until then, bye-bye.